So our church has a contract, our staff, through our church, our staff has phones and it is for the purpose of church ministry. That is legitimate.
Are the phones in their name? The bill come to them or come to the church?
Comes to the church.
No problem.
Okay.
Yes.
You familiar with the thing that came out from headquarters a few weeks ago? It might have been in the retirement brackets and that little quarterly report that says to us, don't do that, take a cell phone allowance.
I know I am not. I'm not familiar with that.
Because I'm really confused here. For all these years, we've had cell phones in the church's name, the church paid it. They're saying, don't do that, take a cell phone allowance. So I instructed the accounts payable person to, I'll be paying myself the cell phone bills now, and the church gives me an allowance.
Rather than the church provide the phone. They're telling you not to do
I
that.
like them to provide the phone. That's my understanding. If anyone else read it, please help me.
It could be that the IRS has changed some of the rulings, because this is relatively new.
I'm not sure whether that came from Business and Records or from the Benefits Board, but I know I was in a couple of conversations on that, and that was in response to new IRS regulations about cell phones.
Yeah, the thing about cell phones is a relatively new thing, so the IRS may have promulgated some new regulations that are just now coming out. So you need to check into that.
We take it 50-50. That cell phone is 50% personal, 50% church related.
But you got to do a time study of that.
Well, that's fine if you can justify it. If you can justify that that is an appropriate split of the cost based on personal use and ministry use. Yes?
So, I didn't read that from the benefits packet. Brother Washington, maybe you can answer that.
Well, I promised God I wouldn't be an accountant. I intend to keep my promise. But I believe the IRS has issued some new regulations about it and said we're looking at this more closely now, and we consider cell phones provided by an employer as a benefit and not just for business, and we're going to require documentation. So in response to that kind of regulation, these are just some suggested ways to solve the problem by splitting it 50-50 or going under one of these other type of allowance plans or something like that. But if you do something along that line, you're probably going to stay out of trouble more than just having to show that you received an employer-provided telephone full-time. That helps you.
Because they want to what?
They want to curb...
Charge that as an income?
Yeah, they want to curb what they think is an abuse by people who get, who are able to write off or receive an employer-provided cell phone and then use it totally for personal benefit. That's what they say they're trying to do. In that regard, Ron, I would be sure and cite all of you to the book, The Church and Clergy Tax Guide, which is probably the best book out on this. It's called Church and Clergy Tax Guide. It's produced by Christian Ministry Resources or Church Law and Tax Report. It's the best materials out on all of these things. But this book I'm talking about, I mentioned it to Ron, and he knows about it. It covers almost every subject that we have discussed today along these lines. It's about that thick. It's more than you would ever want to know about this subject, produced by Richard Hammer and Christianity Today. You can order that book from the Benefits Board for about $17, but it goes into painstaking detail on every one of these subjects. And it is a sure cure for insomnia sometimes. You're having trouble going to sleep. But it is a great book, and it'll answer all of your questions.
Richard's got 2 or 3 publications that are well worth investing in. I've got a couple of slides at the very end here. It'll be available hopefully before too long on the website. You can go there. And this particular document right here, the Church Law and Tax Report, is on there. There's one called the Church Treasurer Alert. Excellent little 4-page newsletter, comes out once a month. Great information in there, and some other things that I'll show you here at the very end. We're going to move along here. I want to talk just a moment about salaries. The IRS has come out with a new ruling about policies having to do with improper inurement and improper excess benefits and so forth. And one way you can help yourself with this is take a look at some salary surveys. If you're wanting to make sure that you're paying your youth director appropriately and your music director or whatever it may be, there are several salary surveys out there that are very helpful. Richard Hammer's organization does one. They divide it by size of the church in terms of congregation, in terms of finances. They even divide it geographically. So you could find one for here in the Midwest as opposed to the far West, where the cost structure is different. Those salary surveys can help you. And if you ever get questioned by the IRS, you can say, hey, look, we're right smack in the middle of the range of salaries for this position. And it can help you in a lot of regards there. We're going to move along very quickly here. Okay, what about this issue? Ministers and Social Security. Is opting out a good idea?
No.
No.
Yes.
Nobody going to say yes?
No.
That's a question that you get answers on both sides most of the time. The only thing I would caution you about here is if you do opt out, one of the big things you lose, in my view, is the disability coverage. So if you become disabled as a young man or a young woman, you better have some disability insurance in place to cover that. Otherwise, you got a big hole, a big risk that you're taking.
One of the issues about opting out, I've read that statement from the IRS that they say about how to opt out, and there's a real moral issue involved in that whole statement they made, because it talks about that you're not going to take any kind of assistance, that you're not taking government assistance. So if you ever take food stamps or things of that nature at any point in your life, then you basically nullify your ability to opt out of that. From the way that I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but when I read that, I'm thinking, and you've got to really, it's like standing before God and saying, I will never take anything from the government in order to do that. And I don't know that that's a pretty heavy statement.
In my view, you're better to stay in the system because there are some protections there that you'd need to replace if you did opt out of the system. Yeah, there's some advantages there.
Not that I'm old.
Oh, no. There's some advantages there, that's for sure. It's very confusing. For federal income tax purposes, you're considered an employee of the church. For Social Security purposes, you're considered as self-employed. So those two things are very different. And you do have the option, if you choose to not participate in Social Security. Let's talk very quickly about computer systems. What about hardware or software? What's the more important issue when you're developing an information system in your church? Software. Pick your software first, and then find the hardware that's going to run it. Okay? There's a number of good software packages out there. How many of you are using Quicken or QuickBooks? Can I see your hands? Okay. Several of you. I would tell you this to you. Quicken is basically just an electronic checkbook. QuickBooks is a great program for small business. It is not very good for churches, in my opinion. Now, it will do an adequate job, but at some point, you're going to want a better tool than that. And there's some out there that are really not too expensive. If you need some help and some guidance on that, I'd be glad to share with you what I've learned over the years about good church management software packages that are not very expensive that you can use, that do a much, much better job of managing church finances than QuickBooks does. QuickBooks says it has a nonprofit